Got woke up, I think it was a little after midnight, and he said there had been an accident. And I said, okay, how's Gary? And he said, well, Gary was involved. We're at the hospital, you need to get your mom and come to the hospital. And I said, Devin, is Gary okay? And he said, no, Gary's dead.
We're following another developing headline as well. The search for a man accused of shooting and killing a police officer in Missouri after he was pulled over. The officer, an Army veteran with just a year on the job, what his family said was his dream job.
I remember standing in the hall at the hospital. One of them came up to hug me, and I said, it's just not supposed to happen in Clinton. You know, this is not supposed to be the place where something like this would happen.
They were experiencing the most severe pain of their lives.
Clinton was just a normal small town. I guess you took it for granted. You didn't think too much about it. You know, you knew a lot of the people knew you.
It was just big enough where everybody didn't absolutely know your name, but yeah, you kind of always had a friend or somebody that did. I thought the town was a complete American town, really, at the end. We had the downtown square, we had our old glory days, you know, this is America, right?
We all get along for the most part. I mean, we try to respect each other's opinions, even if we don't agree with them or they're not the same as ours, which I think is kind of the magic of this community. Agriculture is one of our biggest economic providers for folks around this area. And of course, sitting on Truman Lake, we get a lot of lake traffic in the summer months.
You get to do a lot of things that you don't get to do in big cities, you know, going into school, saying hi to kids, you know, stopping at places and just knowing everybody kind of where you go and everybody knowing who you are too. So prison where I went that didn't know, hey, that's Officer Chris or Sergeant Maudlin or whatever. So it's always just kind of heartwarming. You grew up, you know, I coached a lot in the community, plus being a police officer, I got to see a lot of people grow up.
You'd go down the street, you'd see people you know. You have your restaurants, you know the owners of those restaurants. There's nowhere else like home, that's for sure.
I think we all felt as citizens of the town that we were living like this small town American dream. And before my brother, we really didn't have that big problem.
I came home one time and we were building the house out there, and you know how they put a big pile of dirt on one side, and I came home and all of a sudden I saw Garrett flying over this dirt and then Chris flying over the dirt. It would just floor me sometimes. It was like, you guys have got to be kidding me.
Fishing was always very big, whether it was just going out and fishing with Dad at Truman, or later on he loved bow fishing.
Did some tournaments and bow fish together. It worked out really nice because we could both do our day job, and you mostly do that at night. And so duck hunting was a big part of our family and still is. You know, Thanksgiving morning, we're in the duck blind together. There was this one time, and it sticks in my mind very vividly. We were coming back from bow fishing one day in the truck, and I don't remember what happened. Something really small, but it's one of those anchor moments in your life. And I looked over at him and I said, man, brother, I really love you. And I'm so glad we get to do this. And he turned to me and just in full eyes, contact, he said, man, I really love you too.
I think there's a few words that kind of say it. Helpful, always very helpful. silly. The boy was just silly, and he was always cracking me up. He loved to make people laugh. And grinning. He had this grin. I mean, that is one of the things that sticks in my mind and gets me the most, is that grin.
I like to bow fish. I like to boat. I like go on the boat, go on the lake. Anything we could do to relax. Just spend time together, just hang out.
One of the most touching times with me is when Gary married Cindy.
God designed her mind, body, spirit to be able to love my brother and vice versa, no doubt. I mean, I told that boy, man, if you don't marry that girl, you're an idiot.
She was in an accident, and that really opened his eyes to his true feelings for her. And I remember when he came to tell me he was going to propose, he was just so nervous, you know.
As most weddings, it was a fun, stressful occasion. You know, we did it out at the Michael home. I had the joy of performing his wedding for him.
He went in the car business, but he was never really satisfied, you know. I mean, it was something like, okay, this is making me a living and everything, and it's good, but it was just never the right fit until then he finally decided to come home and go to the police academy and become a police officer.
I was happy about it because I knew that's what he wanted to do in life, and he's always wanted to do that. So I was scared though, you know, I was scared that something could happen. And we had talked about that. I remember sitting on the steps in front of the house, and he was just telling me, you know, if anything ever happened, you know, he wanted me to go on with life and that he knew I could do it. He knew I was strong. We always knew that that was a possibility that something could happen, but, you know, and I always said, you know, in the small town of Clinton, you know, it's not going to happen here.
Gary came into the police station when he was about 16 years old. And wanted to know if there was anything in law enforcement as a pursuit specialist. And I said, well, what are you talking about? And he talked about, you know, well, if you know somebody's running from you, you got a guy with a really souped up hot car, you'd call him out and you'd go chase him down, and you know, like the road warrior. I said, well, you know, I don't think we have anything like that, son. That's a great idea, though.
Shortly before his death, we had a parking lot conversation, which we did on more than one occasion. I asked him how things were with you know, being on the Clinton Police Department, and you know, he described his life then as he had found what he was looking for.
Gary was so fortunate, and not many humans get this. He had found his calling. He had found his person. He was truly happy. I believe if he was still alive today, his happiness would still be on a plateau. Being in his life for so long, there was maybe always one little area that wasn't quite in sync. Well, Gary's life was in sync. I remember when I went to bed, I had heard sirens, quite a few sirens, and I, you know, to be honest with you, I didn't, fire truck, whatever it was, I didn't even know. Now I know. And got woke up, I think it was a little after midnight, Ms. Devin, and he said there had been an accident. And I said, okay, how's Gary? And he said, well, Gary was involved. We're at the hospital, you need to get your mom and come to the hospital. And I said, Devin, is Gary okay? And he said, no, Gary's dead. he said he was shot.
Cindy's son called Chris. Chris called me. My husband answered the phone, and I didn't know who it was, but my husband all of a sudden reached over and grabbed my hand, and so I knew it was something not good. But honestly, Gary Lee never even crossed my mind.
I immediately started thinking about my mom.
It was a Sunday night. I was just getting into bed, and Chris called me and said, I need to talk to you.
And I said, hey, why don't you come out on the front porch?
That's, I just opened the door, and he kind of pulled me out, and he kind of looked in my eyes and said, Gary's with Dad now. And my mind couldn't comprehend what he was telling me.
He's in no more pain. And she said, well, what are you talking about? I said, there's been an accident, Mom, and Gary and Dad are together again.
And I could hear Dad leaving. I could hear he had his boots on. Well, I just went back to sleep and didn't think anything of it. And I remember waking up and coming out of my bedroom right in a little hallway, and immediately I saw my mom, and I knew something had happened.
I remember standing in the hall at the hospital. One of them came up to hug me, and I said, it's just not supposed to happen in Clinton. This is not supposed to be the place where something like this would happen.
And I just remember walking in and just looking at Cindy and just this absolute blank look, and looking at Mom, and just, after the sudden death of Dad and that shock and stuff, it was just like seeing all that again on her face was just horrible. And there's nothing to say, there's nothing to, you just walk in and you hug and you cry. And
the vivid memory is I walked back out, and I could hear the helicopters. I could hear all these sirens in different parts of the town. There was some highway patrol, I think, that flew by in front of the hospital. And I was like, man, how is this life? This is like Hollywood. There's helicopters above. Everybody's searching for my brother's murder. He's dead in the hospital. And I just started throwing up.
We're following another developing headline as well. The search for a man accused of shooting and killing a police officer in Missouri after he was pulled over. The officer, an Army veteran with just a year on the job, what his family said was his dream job.
Tonight, investigators in Missouri on the hunt, heavily armed officers going door to door, searching for any sign of the suspect.
He made a traffic stop that night, and it was an innocuous reason. It was for a vehicle that didn't have its lights on.
The dark gray and colored Dodge SUV, unknown occupants.
And he called his stop out, and as he stepped out of the vehicle, the driver of the vehicle he stopped stepped out at the exact same time and leveled a rifle at Gary.
321 status. Central 321 status check. Clinton car 21's not moving. His vehicle's still parked.
Fired a shot at him. The round hit Gary, and it penetrated his ballistic vest and split into 3 pieces as it entered him.
I believe we have shots fired, contact county and state. Shots fired, officer down, I repeat, officer down.
And it hit his heart and his lungs and his diaphragm, from what we could determine, and that caused him to die.
Golden Valley EMS here, response 100 block of East Green, 100 block of East Green. I have an officer shot, 100 block of East Green.
It's really hard to put in words then, and equally as hard to put in words now. The first officer killed in the line of duty in the history of the city, so it was pretty traumatic. Those first few hours and days for the family, they were horrible. They were experiencing the most severe pain of their lives.
tough day today. It was a very tough day. But we had each other throughout the whole day, and had a lot of questions today that we'd never asked. But today we all were together. And I'll never forget the question somebody asked me, "Are you mad?" One of the reporters said, "Aren't you mad? Are you mad?" And I said, "No, I'm sad. I'm sad for my brother. I'm sad for the guy that he was so lost that he thought this was going to help. Be sad that we got to this point that he didn't get help beforehand, that the vest didn't stop the bullet. Be sad on those things. Be sad that Gary's gone. Be sad that people are going to be ravished by this. Be sad that kids are scared to go out right now." That was the start of what a whirlwind of a 5 days. Never forget in my life. Couldn't if I wanted to. I mean, I've tried.
A night of tears and also happy memories, all to honor the life of a fallen officer.
Gary Michael was shot and killed Sunday during a traffic stop. His small town showing a large show of support tonight.
She says to every condolence, well wish, and seeing how many people came out to honor her husband is helping through this difficult time.
I wanted to thank everybody for being here and supporting us. It's overwhelming support.
You know, just to see, you couldn't really see anybody, but just to see the mass of people and all the lights, and you know, it was just so amazing. It was unbelievable.
For me, it was a big deal, you know, seeing all the people there. That square was full. I mean, everyone knows the square was packed.
And it was really just for our community is what I felt like. I felt like it was our community just putting their arms around us.
It wasn't just his family. It wasn't just his brothers and sisters with the police department. It wasn't just everybody else in law enforcement. The community was hurting.
Hopefully it was a healing thing for everybody. I know for us it was absolutely amazing watching everybody come together.
Now, tonight's vigil served as the start of several official ceremonies to honor Gary Michael. On Friday, there will be a visitation of the local funeral home, and on Saturday, there will be the funeral for Officer Gary Michael at a local convention center.
After he was caught, I think is when people kind of had their moments. I know for me, my moment happened when they brought him back to town in that escort.
Seeing that procession come down and all those cops and everything, and then seeing my brothers in that casket and the flag and everything like that, I remember I had to take a knee because it was seriously tough physically to see it, the tears, the emotion.
You know, not until later on, you know, on the news did you see the magnitude of this escort, but you couldn't see the end of it. I know we came up over some pretty big hills, and you could see back a mile, and you still couldn't see the end of it.
You know, to see that on the news, people lined the overpasses. People were parked on the overpasses, and had banners. Were waving, were waving flags. Were showing their respect. We're standing at attention. We're saluting, and that was all the way from Kansas City to Clinton, over 80 miles. As they were getting closer to Clinton, the streets started to fill up.
I stood at the corner of 2nd and Jefferson Street, and after it kind of passed by, I broke down right kind of in the street right there.
It was an experience I'll never forget.
Clinton were lined with motorcycles, all of them here to show support for Officer Gary Michael's family and friends and other officers. For One Club, coming here was very personal. A club from Kansas City made up of retired and active law enforcement made the trip to Clinton. A group of men and women who know from experience what it's like to walk the thin blue line.
There was a nationwide email that went out and told those in the area. I would say we had hundreds of Patriot Guard riders. The Patriot Guard got up the morning of the funeral. We were all out here hours before the family or anybody else got here. We got out there, we had our brief meeting with one another to understand what our mission was all about that day. And then each Patriot Guard member was given an American flag to hold for the family, friends, and other law enforcement to walk by as they proceeded into to mourn.
Inside, it was quite emotional as many remembered Officer Gary Michael as a true hero who loved to serve and protect.
At that point, I said, I think I want to give his eulogy. It's been laid upon my heart. I think there's nobody better. I can do it. And let me tell you something personally. That was my big brother. He had protected me a lot. Nobody else was going to do that. Now, didn't know how I was going to do it. Didn't know what I was going to say, but it was coming from me. I went home that night and started typing out on the computer. Problem was I still had some gaps missing, not in his faith, but in how I was going to use this as a platform for God. Went to bed, still missing a big part of it. My aunt emails me and calls me at 5:30 in the morning. Don't know why. God put these words on my heart. It's exactly what I was missing, 100%. At that point, I plugged it in. I'm good. This isn't me, this is God gonna give this speech. So I went up to the Benson Center. I wanted to go in and see how they had it set up. Somebody came in and said, oh, we didn't know you were gonna be here when they brought Gary over. Well, I wasn't. And they brought Gary over then, and I got to have a moment with him. And I said, hey, I'm gonna make you proud today. One last time. And I just thanked him. I hadn't thanked Gary yet. That was the last piece of what I needed to say. Because throughout that whole time, I never thanked Gary for what he did for me and, as a brother. So I show up, new suit, good, speech is done, ready to go. And I was so calm in that moment. It was great.
So I've told you about my brother's love, and I've told you about his hard work. Told you about his servant heart. Now, let me tell you about my brother's faith. When we grew up, my father posed one question. You will see it written in stone on my father's grave this afternoon when we lay my brother beside it. What will you do with this man called Jesus? Now, there's one person I haven't thanked this week. He was my hero. He was my light. He was my guardian when I was little and picked me up and encouraged me. He encouraged me as a man. He loved me when I failed. He loved me always. So to you, brother, I say thank you, and I love you.
I was sitting after the visitation in the back of the room out there at the Benson Center. So my mom come over, a little bitty, skinny Irish woman, you know, just used up and at the end of all of it, and came over and sat down, and I could feel her kind of looking at me, and she just kind of hit me in the arm, and I looked at her and she goes, "Get your head up." And I said, "What?" And she said, "Get your head up, boy. Pick yourself up. You know, people need you, and you need them. You get your head up and you stand up."
for me, the healing process was wear something, you know, do something in memory. The year before, I always wore my big, huge USA headband that's goofy. It was one of those traditions I wanted to keep going. When Gary died, I knew that's what I wanted. It was one of those things I wanted to do, and I wanted to get the guys on the team to support me with it. And everyone did. Everyone was all for it. After that, it just kind of took off. It was one of those things we were just kind of known for. You can look back in the yearbook and see, yeah, Clinton Soccer and all their blue headbands. But you know, that's how hard it hit us. You know, it was one of those things. You know, I guess we all have those things you guys stand for. That was my one thing.
There's a quality to this community that's different from any other community I've lived in. I've lived in good communities. But there's a quality to this community that is that is just different, amazingly different.
The lyrics dealing with the friendship the two shared and the sacrifice Officer Michael ultimately paid this past weekend. Curl says he wrote the song in 2 hours, then posted it to Facebook. Since then, the song has been shared more than 8,000 times.
If you go around town, you will still see those flags that first appeared shortly after Gary's death in windows all over town.
There's still people that come up to me and tell me some of the things that he did or he helped them.
We will wrap him in our flag and in our love. We will put him to rest in the soil of the city that he protected. We'll support his family in their grief, stand by the officers he served with, say a prayer for his memory, and for all those men and women who serve and protect all of us.
We'll protect you when you need us in your darkest day. Help the innocent and weary, and we're here to stay. God has granted us this power they can't take away. Fallen brothers, we remember rushing in to fight. They've left a legacy of service to do what's right. We'll push on.